During our family vacation, my 14-year-old daughter collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. My parents and my sister posted, "Finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen." I didn't shout. I took action. When they returned home, they found this on their kitchen table and started screaming. Sounds like the setup for a bad soap opera, right? Unfortunately, it was just another Tuesday with my family. If you've ever wondered what it's like to go on holiday with people who treat cruelty like a team sport, buckle up. We do these family trips every year. Tradition, my parents call it. Personally, I call it masochism, but my daughter was excited about this one. It was somewhere she'd been begging to go for ages. She was practically counting down the days, and even though I dreaded the circus, I gave in. That's the thing about being a single mom. Sometimes you put yourself in the lion's den just to give your kid a happy memory. So there we were. Me, my daughter, my parents, my sister, her husband, and their 2 kids. Sounds wholesome, but wholesome ends at the brochure. Behind the smiles, it's every man for himself, with my parents acting like referees who've already picked their favorite team. Spoiler, it's never mine. Day 1, breakfast, and my daughter says her stomach hurts. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet, "Mom, my belly doesn't feel right." Before I can answer, my mother swoops in. "Oh, please, don't start with the drama already. We just got here." My sister snorts. She's probably just trying to get out of walking. Lazy, like always. And the cousins, smelling blood, chime in like a Greek chorus. "Drama queen! Drama queen!" It's like they were waiting for it, honestly. One tiny weakness, and suddenly it's family game night. I tried to comfort her, but I admit, part of me wanted to believe it was nothing. Easier to shrug it off than start a fight with my parents before noon on day 1. By midday, the pain was worse. She was pale, holding her stomach, walking slowly behind the group. "Don't milk it," my dad barked when she asked to sit down for a minute. "She's always been like this," my mom muttered, making sure I heard. "She'll make a scene out of nothing." My sister rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Meanwhile, my daughter stayed quiet. She hates attention, which is ironic because they all think she lives for it. She tried to keep up, probably desperate not to be mocked again. That broke me a little, watching her try to minimize her pain so these people wouldn't laugh at her. That's what this family does, turns suffering into entertainment. By dinner, she was barely eating. She sat with tears in her eyes, while everyone else clinked glasses and laughed. My sister leaned into her husband and whispered something, and both their kids snickered at my daughter. I asked what was so funny. They smirked. "Nothing." "Right. Nothing." And then it happened. She stood up, maybe to go to the bathroom, and just folded, like a puppet with its strings cut. One moment she was upright, the next she was on the floor, clutching her stomach and gasping in pain. For a split second, the table went quiet. Then my mom broke the silence. "Oh, for heaven's sake!" Like my kid collapsing was just her pulling another stunt. I lost it. I grabbed my daughter, yelled for help, and we got her rushed to the hospital. That night was a blur. White walls, harsh lights, doctors asking questions, nurses moving quickly. My daughter curled on the bed, in agony. Me sitting there trying not to cry. I didn't know what was happening. Appendicitis? Food poisoning? Something worse? My brain went to dark places. All I knew was my baby was in pain, and I couldn't fix it. I texted my family to let them know we were at the hospital. No reply. Hours crawled by. Test after test, me pacing, holding her hand, telling her it would be okay even though I didn't know that. At some point, desperate for distraction, I checked my phone. And that's when I saw it. A photo, posted an hour earlier. My parents, my sister, and the cousins, grinning by the pool, cocktails in hand. The caption, "Finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen." I froze. My daughter was in a hospital bed, crying out in pain, and they were out there celebrating, posting selfies, mocking her, mocking us. I stared at that picture until my hands shook. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to march back to that hotel and drag them all here to see what drama really looked like. But I didn't. Because in that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of being dismissed, of being told I was the disappointment, of watching them play favorites and belittle me, and now my daughter, it all came into focus. And I knew. This was it. The line. They'd crossed it, and there was no going back. I sat there, beside my daughter's hospital bed, while the people who should have cared most were clinking glasses without us. And instead of shouting, I made a decision. They weren't going to get away with it. If you want to understand why my parents could sit by a pool and toast cocktails while my daughter was in a hospital bed, you have to rewind. I didn't just happen into a toxic family. I was raised in one like a lab experiment. From day one, it was obvious who the favorite was. My sister, 2 years older, perfect on paper, perfect in their eyes. The golden child who sparkled when she sneezed. And me? I was the control group, the disappointment. They never said those words out loud. You're the disappointment. But they didn't have to. It was in the way my mother's voice tightened every time I opened my mouth. The way my father sighed when I tried something and didn't excel. The way teachers would compare me to my sister, and my parents would just nod like, yes, exactly. Why can't she be like that? Imagine growing up with a mirror that only shows you what you're not. That was my childhood. When I was little, I tried. God, did I try. I studied harder, I dressed neater, I even practiced smiling in the mirror because my sister's smile seemed to get her everything. I thought if I could just mimic it, maybe I'd get a fraction of what she got. Spoiler, I didn't. Instead, the more I tried, the more obvious it became that I wasn't her. And in my family, not her was the same as failure. It's funny, kids believe what you feed them. I grew up swallowing disappointment 3 meals a day until I thought it was part of my DNA. If my parents had handed me a certificate that said, certified failure, I would have framed it. By the time I hit my teens, that sense of worthlessness had calcified. So when I fell for a boy who treated me like trash, of course I did. He wasn't good for me, but at least he noticed me. At least when he looked at me, I wasn't invisible. That was enough. Until it wasn't. I got pregnant. Young. Too young for them, even though my sister was the same age when she married her high school sweetheart. The difference? She had a ring. I didn't. When I told my parents, my mother's face looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. My father didn't even look at me, just muttered, "Figures." My sister, queen of empathy, smirked and said, "Well, at least now you've got a purpose." I thought being pregnant might make me important. Instead, it just made me their cautionary tale. The baby's father was a toxic mirror of my parents, manipulative, cruel, impossible to please. I guess we gravitate toward what we know. That lasted about 5 minutes before it imploded, and when he was gone, I was relieved, terrified, but relieved. And for the first time in my life, I felt something like pride, not in myself, but in her. My daughter. She was tiny and helpless and needed me, and that meant I mattered, even if only to her. Of course, my parents weaponized that too. Single mother, shameful. She won't amount to anything. My sister looked at me like I was a walking reminder of what not to be. But here's the kicker. The house we lived in? It wasn't theirs. It was my grandmother's. My grandmother was the only person in that family who ever looked at me and saw me. Not the failed copy of my sister, not the disappointment, just me. She was older by then, fragile, but sharp. I helped her around the house, took care of her, and she loved my baby with a fierceness I had never seen before. The way she'd cradle her, whisper to her, beam at her like she was sunlight itself. I used to watch them together and feel this ache in my chest, like, so this is what love is supposed to look like. Then my grandmother died, and everything tilted. Everyone assumed the house would go to my mother. After all, she was the daughter. My father used to talk about our home, like the deed already had their names on it. My sister started redecorating in her head before the will was even read. But my grandmother wasn't stupid. She saw them, she knew them, and maybe she knew that if she left the house to her daughter, I would never escape the cycle. So she did something my parents never forgave her for. She left the house to my baby. Not me. My baby. In trust, with me as guardian until she came of age. When I first found out, I thought it had to be a mistake. Who leaves property to a toddler? But then I remembered the way my grandmother had looked at my daughter, like she was worth protecting, like she deserved better than the circus we lived in. And suddenly, it made perfect sense. My parents? They lost their minds. My mother wailed about betrayal. My father said my grandmother had been confused at the end. My sister whispered about culture and tradition, how the house should naturally pass to the adult daughter, not a child. They stormed around like the victims, while I sat there with a toddler on my lap and a piece of paper in my hands that said, legally, this house wasn't theirs. It was hers, my daughter's. But here's the thing. When you've spent your whole life being told you're worthless, you don't wake up the next morning suddenly full of power. I didn't kick them out. I didn't throw the deed in their faces. I did what I'd always done. I kept my head down. I told myself, it's just a formality. It's still their house. Don't rock the boat. So we stayed. My parents continued to treat it as theirs. They filled the rooms with their rules, their voices, their judgment. I raised my daughter in the same house where I had been raised as a disappointment, hoping maybe things would be different this time. They weren't. Every time my mother scolded me, every time my father sighed, every time my sister visited with her perfect life and her perfect kids, it was the same chorus: failure, failure, failure. Only now, I had someone watching me absorb it. My daughter. That was the part that kept me up at night. Not my parents' cruelty, I was used to that, but the thought that she might grow up thinking this treatment was normal, that she'd believe, the way I once believed, that she was a burden. And if you've ever wondered why I snapped when I saw that pool selfie, when I saw them mocking her while she was in the hospital, this is why. Because it wasn't just a caption. It was a lifetime of cruelty, now directed at the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered. When the doctor finally came in, I thought my chest might cave in. "Appendicitis," he said, flat as a hammer on steel, like he was telling me the time. Good news. It hadn't burst yet. Bad news. They had to operate immediately. And the worst part? I was alone in that room. Alone with my fear. Alone with the silence from the people who should have been there. I wanted to text them. Just one line. She needs surgery. She could have died. But I stopped myself, because I already knew how it would play out. At best, my sister would send an eye roll in text form. At worst, they'd laugh about drama queen again. So I didn't call. And they didn't either. Not once. My daughter was being prepped for surgery, and they were still splashing in that damn pool. The operation went smoothly. The surgeon told me she'd recover fine, and I nearly collapsed myself. I sat there by her bed afterward, watching her breathe under the thin hospital blanket, thinking, this is what it means to actually show up for someone. And in the same breath, I thought, my parents never have. Not for me. Not for her. They'd toasted cocktails while I panicked in this chair. That's when it hit me. I had leverage. Real, legal leverage. The trust. The house. The one card my grandmother had pressed into my hand when she died, and I'd been too scared, too conditioned, to ever play it. Not anymore. While my daughter slept, I called a lawyer. My voice was steady. Too steady, maybe. He took down the details, and by the time we left the hospital a few days later, the papers were ready. Formal notice. 30 days. I didn't sneak it into a drawer. I didn't send it through the post like a bill. No, I put it right on the kitchen table, dead center, let it sit there like a live wire. And then I waited. The holiday stretched another week. Every day they posted more. Beaches, dinners, matching grins, family time. Every caption felt like it was aimed at me. At her. I stayed silent. For once, the silence was mine. And then the front door opened. Suitcases dragged across the floor. Laughter echoed. My parents walked in first, tan and smug, with my sister right behind them, her husband and kids trailing along. They froze when they saw me sitting at the table, the letter in front of me. The room went still. My mother reached for it first, scanned the lines, and went red. My father's jaw clenched like stone. My sister's face twisted like she'd swallowed something bitter. Then the screaming began. "This is our house!" my mother shouted, waving the paper. "She was confused when she wrote that will," my father barked. "You know she was old. She didn't know what she was doing." "You can't be serious," my sister snapped, her voice climbing. "This is family. You don't kick family out." The cousins just stared, wide-eyed, like they'd stumbled into a play they didn't audition for. I didn't move. My friend sat beside me, sipping tea slowly, watching the circus unfold. My mother slammed the letter down again. "Ungrateful," she spat. "After everything we've done for you, after raising you, you owe us this." I looked at her, calm as ice. "No, I don't. It's my daughter's house. You have 1 month." You'd think I had set the place on fire. My father turned purple. My sister started ranting about culture, tradition, respect. My mother wailed about betrayal. The cousins whispered drama queen again, as if that word could undo ink on paper. I stayed steady. I didn't shout. I didn't budge. "You have 1 month," I repeated. They threw everything at me. Pleading, threats, guilt trips. My sister leaned across the table, furious. "Just take it back. Tear it up. You can't really mean this." "If you care so much," I said, "let them live with you." And that shut her up cold. It went on for hours. Accusations, slammed doors, red faces, tears that looked rehearsed. My friend never left my side, not once. At one point, my father leaned in, his voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this. You're still the same failure you've always been." I smiled, tired and sharp. "Maybe, but I'm the failure who just gave you 30 days to find a new place to live." That shut him down, too. By the end of the night, the noise had burned itself out. My parents retreated to their room, muttering. My sister gathered up her kids and left, fuming. I went upstairs, tucked my daughter into her bed, kissed her forehead. She stirred, murmured my name, and I felt the weight shift. For the first time in years, the power was mine. They thought they owned this house. They thought they owned me. But the notice was on the table, the clock was ticking, and there was no undoing it. And I knew one thing as I turned out the light. They weren't going to take this quietly. Living with my parents after handing them an eviction notice was like sleeping with snakes in the bed and pretending you couldn't hear them hiss. The letter was on the table. The clock was ticking. But they still sat at the kitchen every morning, rattling mugs and slamming drawers, as if noise could change the law. The atmosphere was poisonous. My father reading the paper with exaggerated sighs, my mother whispering, "Ungrateful," just loud enough for me to hear. The air in that house had weight to it, pressing down on me and my daughter until even breathing felt like defiance. And my daughter, still sore from surgery, had to walk past their stairs on her way to the bathroom. 14 years old and recovering from appendicitis, but they looked at her like she'd ruined their lives. Then came the posts. I didn't see them first. My cousin sent me screenshots. My parents, smiling sadly beside staged boxes by the door. Caption: "Thrown out by our own daughter, betrayed, made homeless." Homeless. They were sitting in my kitchen when that went live. More posts followed. My father perched on the stairs looking tragic. My mother clutching a photo album like a widow in a soap opera. The captions wrote themselves. "We gave her everything. She gave us nothing." And the comments rolled in. Aunts, uncles, extended family all piling on. How could she? Shameful. Doesn't she know what family means? Family. Right. The same family that had called my kid a drama queen while she writhed in pain. I didn't answer. Not yet. Then my sister came. She didn't storm in this time. She knocked, but the look on her face was just as sharp. Sat down across from me like she was a lawyer and I was on trial. "You can't really mean this," she said. "You've made your point. Stop before it destroys everything." I stirred my tea. "Everything's already destroyed." "You're tearing the family apart." I laughed, dry, sharp. "No, I'm finally refusing to let them tear me apart." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Finally, she said, "You'll regret this." "Probably," I said, "but I'll regret staying a lot more." She left in a storm of perfume and indignation, and for once, I didn't feel small when the door slammed. Meanwhile, the posts kept multiplying. My parents had turned the house into a stage, performing victimhood for anyone who would watch. And it was working, at least until I decided to speak. I don't post much. I don't like it. But silence has its limits. I took their poolside selfie, the one where they toasted finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen, and I set it next to their homeless victims photo. Then I wrote, "During this family holiday, my 14-year-old daughter collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. She was diagnosed with appendicitis. It could have been life-threatening. Not once did my parents or sister ask how she was. Not once did they visit. Instead, they posted this photo, mocking her as a drama queen. This house belongs to my daughter through my grandmother's will. I am her guardian. I will not allow people who laughed at her pain to keep living under her roof. That's the truth." And I hit post. The effect was immediate. The buzzing in my phone stopped. The comments dried up. The relatives who'd been shouting the loudest suddenly had nothing to say. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was clean. My parents didn't post again. The days dragged on, tense and bitter, but quieter. Cupboards still slammed, mutters still floated, but the performance was over. They knew it. By the end of the 30 days, they packed their things and left. No speeches, no posts, just boxes in a car and a door that closed behind them. I walked through the house after they were gone. The rooms felt strange without their noise, like the walls were exhaling for the first time. Upstairs, my daughter was stretched out on her bed, sketchbook in her lap. She looked up when I opened the door. "Are they really gone?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "They're gone." She smiled, tired but genuine. "It feels different already." It did. For the first time, the house wasn't theirs. It wasn't even mine. It was hers. And it was finally free. After they moved out, they didn't exactly land on their feet. They hauled their boxes over to my sister's place, crammed themselves in with her husband, and my daughter's cousins. From what I've heard, it was chaos from day one. Too many people, not enough space, and her husband wasn't thrilled about suddenly inheriting his in-laws. It didn't take long before the cracks showed. Arguments, slammed doors, snide comments. A few months later, my sister finally had enough and kicked them out too. And with that, whatever was left of their relationship went down the drain. Now? Word is they're renting some tiny, cheap place on the far edge of town, a far cry from the house they once thought was theirs. And me? With them gone, life changed overnight. The house is peaceful. My daughter has space to heal, to laugh, to just be a teenager without being mocked for it. I even started renting out one of the spare rooms, which meant I could cut back my hours at work and actually spend evenings with her. For the first time in years, we're not just surviving, we're living. I haven't spoken to the rest of them, and I don't plan to. I just hear the updates through relatives and the occasional social media post. So tell me, do you think I went too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.